Finally, Clemson Sports Talk has come back to Drive Time. Hello, everybody. Lawton Swan back in the saddle once again. It is the show that shakes the Southland. Clemson Sports Talk for you each and every afternoon as you make your way around the great state of South Carolina and beyond, listening to us on incredible radio stations like Fox Sports Radio 1400 The Midlands, heard around the world on the iHeart Radio application. Download it today. It is free. Thank you for being a part of the program this afternoon. And again, I know we haven't always been here with you, but we have been doing some radio rewinds. Give us a thumbs up if you're watching the show. Share the show. Let us know how the audio and the video is going. I've made some changes. One of the reasons I backed off of the video is there's been some glitchiness to it. And I've tried a couple of things, kind of tested a little bit, not in the wild like we're doing now, but today going to push it out again in the wild and see if you guys can give some updates on that front. 803-450-0086 text line and a phone line. And again, I will do my best, I guess you would say, to navigate the ins and the outs of taking your calls here today. If you want to text us, that's always easy for me, quite frankly. Just text us 803-450-0086 and participate or chat with us along as we go here on the program this afternoon. Now, couple of quick things. The topic du jour, what we're diving into is, like, if you're not optimistic, right, about this season already out of the gates, right? My dad tells a story of a time that he got some tickets one season, and the person he was sitting beside was like Mr. Negativity on every front when it came down to the Clemson Tigers. And so it just drove my dad insane. Like, this guy was, no matter what happened, if you picked up, even when there was something positive that took place for Clemson, this guy would inevitably find a negative in it, right? So, oh yeah, sure, they got a first down, but Will Shipley didn't carry the ball. And I think Shipley should have got the ball. So there are the negative people amongst us. I think we all know those fans are out there. But let's say you're optimistic. Let's say you're one of those guys that just has always felt pretty good. And I'm not saying you've got the bumper sticker on your car that says wait till next year, but you feel good about Clemson and where they are. What's the limiting factor? Like, what's the thing for you that you say, okay, this is the reason that this team, instead of making a run towards the college football playoff, instead of making a run towards the ACC championship game, instead of achieving the goals that maybe Dabo Swinney sets for the program, maybe even you as the optimist set for the program, what's that limiting factor for you? Let us know your thoughts on that. 803-450-0086, because, the further we get into fall camp and the more we hear from the players and the more we hear from Dabo Swinney, and again, you can get a jaded approach. You'd be naive not to think that that was a possibility, right? You can get a very jaded, not necessarily approach, but a very jaded view of things by the people on the inside, because they're certainly not going to stand there and tell you about every zit, every wart, every issue that they've got, right? They're going to just talk about the positive things that tend to take place. But if you think about it like that, and what you've heard and what you've seen on our YouTube channel, by the way, our YouTube channel, tinyurl.com/Clemson Sports TV. Head over there and be a part of what we're doing as well. Subscribe and help us bump that over 1,000 and 2,000 and who knows how many more. And follow us on Instagram and Twitter at Clemson Sports. So your optimism, you're right in having it. And nobody's going to blame you for being an optimist. But what is the real factor that limits Clemson? And I'll carry it one step further. Is it so much of a limiting factor for you that it might even be possible that there's honestly not really anything that can be done to change it or improve it? Meaning, if you're down on, say, the offensive line, if that was certainly a concern a year ago. Obviously, from what you heard from Walker Parks the other day, It sounds like there's a lot of positive things going on. I think that certainly Jordan McFadden is a real anchor for Clemson. Blake Miller appears to be emerging, which is a big deal. But if that was where you wanted to lean in, and then you came back at me and said, yeah, but you know what? I just don't think that there's any real fix, then that would be a major concern. That would be a spot that you might want to highlight. So we'll continue here and go through this stuff. Linda chiming into the program today says, Swanee, injuries worry me. And I'm with you, Linda, in some respects. The fact that, look, the depth of talent is rich, but it was a year ago as well. And yet injuries did quite a number on this Clemson Tiger team in 2021. And you could quickly imagine a scenario where, at least I could, and maybe it's because I have to kind of play these things out in my head, right? I can imagine a scenario, though, like Linda's saying, where you just go, man, once again, snake bit, right? Like not being snake bit if you're the Clemson Tigers when it comes down to the 2022 season. Yeah, I think defensively, that defensive line, you're good. And I think you're good enough that you're going to press every team you play to be highly successful offensively. So I don't think Clemson's offense has to necessarily be this juggernaut that maybe some other programs need their offenses to be. Like, I don't think they can just sit back and rest on their laurels by any means, especially after some of the results you had a year ago. But I think the defensive line, that defense, what you see from and really hear from the linebackers, it seems like to me at this point, defensively, that front seven is deep enough and talented enough that a guy or two could get injured. You're not going to see a significant drop-off. I mean, there's just a lot of positives on that defensive side of the ball, up front, linebackers, all that. Now, the back end of the secondary might be one of your first red flags, right? And I think it's a big positive that you've heard good comments about guys like Nate Wiggins and that Malcolm Green talked a lot about the versatility. And we often mention here on this program that I think there is an inherent emphasis put on guys who can do multiple things. You know, Dabo Swinney's not a huge fan of the kid that's specialized in one sport versus the other. Right? Like he tends to lean in on, okay, how do we, how do we find guys who didn't just play football, but they played basketball so that some of those skills that you need on the hardwood translate to the gridiron, or guys that played baseball or any other sports that can give you, some skill set that's a added advantage for you. So defensively, versatility, depth. I mean, I feel fairly comfortable there. Even if you posed to me that you thought the secondary was going to end up being a weakness this year after sending Andrew Booth and Mario Goodrich to the NFL, if that was just kind of like your thing, like I'm worried about the corners. I think much like 2018, where there were some questions about the corners, and all of a sudden, you get a defensive front that really turns things up, and you get, a guy like AJ Terrell and Trayvon Mullen, and all of a sudden they just kind of explode. But part of their ascension and part of the benefit that they had was that there was this incredibly deep and talented defensive line in front of them. And any year that you've got a great defensive line, it makes it easier on that secondary because the amount of time they have to cover. So it's diminished. And so when I look at the defense, like, it's really hard for me to feel like some sort of limiting factor on Clemson's success this year is the defense. And that's probably been the case for you for a while because they've just been so good and so consistent defensively. Now, if you want to talk about in-game adjustments on that side of the ball with Wes Goodwin taking over from Brent Venables, I'll hear your argument. because I don't know that the singular matchup between Clemson and Iowa State a year ago with Wes Goodwin as your defensive coordinator necessarily sets you up to you can't be certain as of yet. It's very easy for somebody to say, "Oh yeah, this guy's a whiz. This guy's been doing it, behind closed doors, and maybe people don't know who he is." But he would have gone. Tim Beret said yesterday, and we've heard this before. And when we talked to Ellis Johnson, just the thought process that if Dabo Swinney had not promoted Wes Goodwin may very well be at Oklahoma right now. Now, I don't know if that's as their defensive coordinator, but in some sort of capacity. And the only thing that I can kind of figure in that sense would be that Swinney believed that he was good enough to be the defensive coordinator at Oklahoma. If you believe he's good enough to be the defensive coordinator at Clemson. So then I think you quickly flip to the offensive side of the ball to look for that limiting factor. And again, in-game adjustments, no doubt, going to be key. Offensive line, shoring that up, yes, but I don't think that's the limit. Wide receivers, staying healthy. I mean, you've already had Bo Collins and Dakari Collins just slightly banged up, if you will. Joe Ngata's lived on what we would call, I guess, professionally, the injured reserve. And hopefully that won't be the case for him. You've got Troy Stellato, who's already out. You've got Adam Randall, who's trying to bounce back and make a return at some point down the line. But I think if we're talking about limiting factors, the limiting factors on the offense, the offensive line is it in one respects. The wideouts have a chance to be. The running backs I feel really good about. But it all comes down to DJ, right? I mean, this whole thing comes down to your perception of DJ and the limiting factor that you think he can be. If you believe that there was a lack of success in 2021, mostly exacerbated by DJ's poor play, then you go into this season with a greater question mark around DJ than you do around any other aspect of this program. And I think you could make the argument, like if we just talk about this recent run of incredible success that Clemson's had, you might have more questions about DJ than you've had about any position group in quite some time. Maybe since 2017 when Kelly Bryant was taking over for Deshaun Watson. You just didn't quite know. You just weren't sure. And heck, Kelly Bryant led you to the college football playoff as the number 1 seed, which still to this day, even when we compared the numbers to DJ's numbers, still blows my mind that Kelly actually had a better season that year than DJ did a year ago. And Kelly Bryant was the limiting factor that year. 803-450-0086. You can also text us to be a part of the program like Alan did. He messaged us live. He said, everyone is good with the D being really good. The question is at QB1. I am with you, Alan. And I think it starts and stops with the straw that stirs the drink. I mean, I don't think there's any question. I think you're all over it. He says the QB1 questions come down to how good the O-line is. That check mark there. And they have the potential to be very good this year. Just his opinion. Yeah, look, I think that's a part of it. And Swinney was quick to defend DJ this offseason. And rightfully so. Everything that happened a year ago wasn't just about DJ Uiagalelei. And I think a portion of the fan base needs to hear that ad nauseum because he was bad. He was bad, but there was a lot of other stuff going on around him. But I still think he's the limiting factor. He's the difference in this team being 11-1 and playing in the ACC championship with a chance to get into the college football playoff, and this team being 9-3 and maybe having a game where you teeter on breaking into the 8-4 record. 8-4 record. Now, if you are a Cade Klubnik guy, I don't think at this point for you, Cade's quote unquote closed the gap. When you listen to Dabo Swinney talking about Cade Klubnik, obviously his ability, his elusiveness in the pocket is a problem for defenses, as Dabo Swinney said. But purple jersey syndrome, doesn't want to get rid of the ball fast enough. Like, there are a lot of things that weigh into that quarterback battle. And with DJ being more confident, down about 30 pounds, you're talking about a guy that went from like 265 at his peak to like 234 now. That, to me, is a difference that's going to create a lot of confidence. But to me, it's still DJ. Still DJ. Every which way but Sunday, or whatever you want to, whatever term you want to use there, it all falls on DJ's shoulders. And that's a lot of pressure. But the good news is, I don't think that it will have the same negative effects that it did on him a year ago when that pressure mounts, because he is more mature. There doesn't seem to be any worries or questions about his leadership ability. And you, just like when we talked to KJ Henry, when we talked to Jordan McFadden, when we talked to Dabo Swinney, I mean, when we had the one-on-one interviews with those guys and they all talk about DJ, it's a glowing, sort of storyline that they give you on him, that, just the way they view him. And the fact that they almost felt guilty. You almost could feel like this guilt from Jordan McFadden that DJ had to shoulder the burden of the issues that weren't created by him. And they may very well happen again. Spencer chiming into the program on the limiting factor for Clemson. He says, can our wide receivers create separation and win 50-50 balls if DJ puts the ball where it needs to be? And that's another point, Spencer, and I appreciate you saying that, because that's something else I brought up. Like, people would say things a year ago like, man, DJ, he's skying the ball. And some of that's his form and technique, and I don't doubt that on film they were able to correct some of that stuff for him. But if you felt like you had an 80-20 guy, like a guy that was going to go up and you could put a 50-50 ball up and this guy was going to make 80% of the catches versus 20, as I've said before, you'd be willing to throw that ball in there. But if you didn't feel that way, then maybe you'd sail it, just to get rid of it. And maybe if he becomes more confident in his wide receivers, he'll start to trust himself a little more to make a throw that a year ago he wasn't comfortable trying to make. I guess it's Rich. He says, I believe dropping the weight should help DJ. No, listen, 100%. Your boy Swanee's down about 8.5 pounds. I'm feeling good. I'm going to start running laps around here pretty soon. Might have to bust out the spray to keep the ladies away. The wife might start to get jealous. They put on this special spray, keep the women off of me. It's starting to look good. 803-450-0086. Text line, phone line. Again, you can be a part of the program anytime. So for everybody watching the show, it's going to be kind of weird here. This is going to be a little bit of an extended break. But for everybody else on iHeartRadio checking out the program, we'll be back in just a few minutes right here on Fox Sports Radio 1400, the Midlands, heard around the world on the iHeartRadio app. What's up, everybody checking out the program? I got to tell you, I'm glad to be back. A lot of fun. Got to get this saved. And I can certainly push you guys off the break, but I'm not going to, because we had this kitten show up in our garage. Look at that guy. And I told the kids, I said, look, if he doesn't leave, we'll take care of him. Well, I thought it was a him. It's a her. But anyway. So Moon is in the room with me here today. And it keeps crawling up in my lap. So if I'm not doing this, if my hands aren't going, it's probably because Moon is up here and I'm trying to keep her from jumping up on the screen. So let me punch you guys into one of the quick little breaks. 1922, where the little ticker runs. And I'm going to upload some stuff real quick and I'll come back. It shouldn't run through too many times. So just hang with me here for a few minutes. So we'll be right back. All right, guys, just a couple of seconds left here. I got to upload one thing and then I'll be good to roll. But this thing was taking a little longer than I needed it to. And if I don't get this file uploaded, won't be good. Won't be good. Thank y'all. Again, check out the Twitter account, the YouTube account. Check us out on Instagram. Share our stuff over there, man. We're really trying to grow that. That's hard though, man. Instagram is tough. So looks like we got everything in the system just in the nick of time. So we'll get ready to get rolling back with the show as soon as this thing is finished. And that'll give us the appropriate window to knock out a couple of quick segments here before I have to upload another one. So we should be good. How's the audio and video today for anybody watching? I made some changes. I am trying to fix it. But now that I'm connected to iHeart, I don't know if it's going to be weird or not, but I'm interested to know. So keep me updated. All right. We're good there. All right. Well, let's rock and roll. What do you say? Rolling along on a Friday afternoon. It is the show that shakes the Southland on Fox Sports Radio 1400 in the Midlands. Heard around the world on the iHeart Radio application. Download it today. It is free. Our website, put the .com on it. Doggone it, that's ClemsonSportsTalk.com. And yes, we are going to attempt to take your phone calls today. I'm hopeful. That we could pull it off, but you never know. The last time we did it, we came through. And I'm getting better at utilizing this, but school kicking off, a couple of things like that made the schedule a little too tight. So we've been talking about the limiting factors for Clemson this year. And again, you don't want to throw it all on DJ, but to me, you kind of go around the defense. I don't see that. The only thing limiting there that I see is Wes Goodwin schemes. Do teams catch on how to take advantage of Wes? Things like that would be an area where I would have some level of, okay, you're not certain, but you feel like even there, those guys just with the talent are going to be able to just kind of take advantage of their skills. Like they're going to dominate some of their position matchups. So I'm not saying, look, you want to put Swanee in the headset, but I think the argument could be fairly made that it may not matter all that much who's calling the plays given the group you've got defensively. And I've kind of said, like, if you want to talk about Wes Goodwin's limiting factor for me, is not about 2022. It's about who are the players on the team in 2025 with Wes Goodwin out on the recruiting trail. Can Wes Goodwin sell the program the way Brent Venables did? Because Wes Goodwin's name doesn't sell like Brent Venables. Venables, when he got to Clemson, he was already a standard in the sport. Brent Venables was a name on Clemson's list when the Tigers were getting ready to hire Dabo Swinney. Venables was a name that you Tiger fans had in your mouth. So was Will Muschamp. We don't talk about those days. We don't bring those up. Not necessarily me, but Clemson fans definitely had Will Muschamp's name in their mouth. Aren't you thankful you didn't land that one? Heck, when Will Muschamp ended up at South Carolina, I tried to warn Gamecock fans. See, I don't have that warning for Gamecock fans now. See, I think they've got the right guy. And I think they're going to eventually be a much bigger problem for you than they are today. Now, will they ever be on the same level as they were with Steve Spurrier? Now, I think that's a bit of a reach. It's tough for me to imagine, even in his greatest run of success, that Shane Beamer is going to match that. And look, the Gamecocks peeking over the fence, one of the reasons they continue to peak is because I don't give them any fluff. But I do think he's definitely going to be successful. But back-to-back 11-2 seasons successful? I don't know. The good news for the Gamecocks is, at least from this observer's perspective, the East seems vulnerable outside of Georgia. And really, Kentucky is in a different plane than they typically are. But because they're Kentucky, I struggle to hold on to them staying firm, where they are. But who knows? Maybe Mark Stoops continues to build that program and continues to keep them in the top 3 in the East, where I think by any person's judgment, they clearly are. And a lot of people would say Kentucky's the second best team in the East. But the limiting factors for Clemson could be over the long haul, the recruiting in Wes Goodwin. Now, James makes a good point, and James says, you're back and it's time for football. Thanks, James. He also says that 2023 class is looking good, and it is, and that's a big positive because when we talk to recruits on ClemsonSportsTalk.com, defensive guys, they are excited about Wes Goodwin. And when you talk to the players, they don't seem to feel as if there was some grand changeover that's going to have a drop-off coaching-wise. And I think they feel like Goodwin is capable of selling himself to recruits. So the product that's on the field will help. But if by 2024, 2025, when you're starting to look at those recruits, if Clemson's performance isn't the same defensively, that's going to be something people are going to point out. Like guys recruiting against you are going to say, well, you did notice there's been a drop-off since Brent Venables left. So why do you want to go there? They're not going to be able to coach you up the way they did when Venables was there. That's a thought. But if we talk about this year, this season, limiting factor, it's DJ, and you go past DJ to Cade Klubnik, and you have to have a legitimate amount of belief in Cade Klubnik to think that if things don't go well for DJ, which could be a byproduct of the offensive line, that all of a sudden Klubnik's going to come in there and be this magic elixir. I've told you here on the program, I think he's going to be a really good football player. But at this point in his career, he's more to me what Hunter Johnson was when he arrived. There's some excitement and there's some hope that he could be a really good player. But it's not it's not the level of excellence that I think Trevor Lawrence brought to that quarterback room day one. And so I don't think if things go poorly for DJ for a multitude of reasons, that all of a sudden Cade's going to come down and that limiting factor is just lifted. I think the quarterback spot from top to bottom is your biggest limiting factor this year. 803-450-0086. Text line, phone line. Again, be a part of the program anytime, any place, anywhere. And, of course, come hang out with us over on our website. If you've never been, put the .com on it, doggone it. That's ClemsonSportsTalk.com. We'll hit a quick break. We'll come back with more right here on a Friday afternoon. And, whoa, what a beautiful Friday afternoon it's been on the show that shakes the Southland. Stay with us. Lawton Swan, Clemson Sports Talk, the show that shakes the Southland. And again, thank you for being a part of the program. If you're watching right now, all I'm asking is that you do your best to let me know about the video. If it glitches, I think the audio is probably going to stay pretty good, but we're testing a few things out and probably going to be live with you guys on the video here for at least the remainder of this segment. Text line, phone line available, 803-450-0086. I haven't even looked to see if the text line, I have not seen a phone call come through because I do have that pulled up here on the program if you want to participate with us today. And, we're just thankful to have you guys hanging out with us, quite frankly. It's just so much fun to talk about Clemson. And thank goodness, right? Like when I think about the run that the Tigers have been on since I've been on the air, I mean, it has just been unbelievable. Like I started the summer before, I believe Clemson went to the Russell Athletic Bowl where they were 10-3. That was year one. And then after that, we're talking about 14-1, 14-1, 12-2, 15-0. Another, what was that, 10-2 season into the college football playoff. And then last year with the Clemson Tigers having a down year, but bouncing back. So I'm not saying I'm the lucky charm. I think Don Munson, who's been on the call for those games, would maybe lean in on that. But that's kind of feels like that. Jeffrey's listening to the program today over in Gary, Georgia. Jeffrey, thank you. I hate to tell you, I couldn't throw a dart at Georgia right now and hit Gary. I probably have a better chance of hitting Gary, Indiana. And I lived in the CSRA down near, Augusta. So I know all about the Central Savannah River area. Shout out to everybody in the Central Savannah River area. I've been reading or listening to, I need to say this. Now, a librarian will tell you that listening to an audiobook is the same as reading. You're making the mental movies in your head. But I've been reading John Feinstein's book on, I believe it's called The Legends Club. Now, that might be the worst problem about, the Legends Club. That might be the worst problem about reading a book. You don't see the cover every day when you turn it on. But this book is about Dean Smith, Mike Krzyzewski, and Jim Valvano, and just the growth of those programs during the 80s and 90s. Some backgrounds on things I didn't know, like Dean Smith just was hooked on Nicorette. After he quit smoking, he would chew Nicorette for the next 40 years. And they say that he would always tell you there wasn't a day that he didn't want to smoke a cigarette. That's how addicted he was to nicotine. And they were telling the story on today's episode I was listening to, and I actually had to go back before the program and watch some of this, about the Duke team that knocked off UNLV to get to Coach K's first national championship. Well, the first national championship win that he had there. And I went back and I watched that. And as a matter of fact, it's almost that game between those two teams, because of the way that UNLV had beaten Duke the season before. I think that final score of that game, and I'm telling you, Boy Scouts honor. I'm not a Boy Scout, but you're just going to have to trust me. I believe the final score in that game the season prior was 103-73. I think UNLV won by 30. And they may have mentioned it in that book. But if they did, I wasn't paying attention. I just kind of had that in my head that was a 30-point shellacking that took place. And so the following season, they're playing again in the Final Four, and everybody's expecting UNLV to just waltz to another national title. Always love a little retrospective here on the program. So for all you young bucks out there that have no idea what I'm talking about, you want to see this, because what you have to understand is, in that very moment, UNLV sort of is the Alabama. They sort of are the Alabama of college basketball. Now, not the same level of dynasty that Alabama's been with Nick Saban, but where Saban would have been after a couple of titles. And you've got this upstart program, Duke, coached by a young coach at that time, Mike Krzyzewski, very similar to Clemson's, kind of rise. And that's what I think I appreciated most about watching that game is there was a clear-cut team that most people would have said should win this ball game. And that, of course, was UNLV. And Duke with some great players, Bobby Hurley, Grant Hill, Thomas Hill, Christian Laettner, who some have argued is the single greatest college basketball player just in terms of success that they've ever seen, and Christian Laettner. And I watched the final moments of that game, and man, what a contest. That's one I'm going to have my son watch the whole thing. It was just that good because you had this UNLV team that kind of felt like the bad guys at that time, and Duke, which was kind of the upstart. And even if you were a Clemson fan or whatever, you kind of were, you were probably rooting for them a little bit because UNLV had been just so dominant. And then all of a sudden, Duke becomes the bad guy, right? Like that's the heel turn. That's the Dabo Swinney turn that we've kind of seen, where there are a lot of people out there that don't like Clemson's program anymore because Swinney's had them on this same track record of success that Duke went on with Coach K. The difference being that even maybe to this day, if they matched up against somebody more powerful than them, like Alabama has been, there's a percentage of people that say, man, I'd much rather Clemson win their third than Alabama get their fourth college football playoff national title. Also in that book, by the way, and this is just my telling you about it, great stories about Jim Valvano that I had no idea about. You want to go check that out. It's called The Legends Club. 803-450-0086. With a quick break, we'll come back. We will put a big old bow right here on hour number 1 on the show that shakes the Southland. Stay with us. All right, everybody. Segment 3 in the can. I'll leave it up to you guys. 14. If you would prefer that I do this last segment, segment 4 of hour 1, with you guys here, just say so, and I will. If you'd rather me go away so you can get about your day, we can. We're going to be talking about the situation out at Texas coming up in the next segment. So I'll leave it to you. Should I stay or should I go? All right, I'm going to punch up the branding real quick so that I can load this audio into the system, and I will be right back. So I'll take your word. Stay or go. Let me know. All right, what'd you guys come? Oh, here we go. Let's see what the jury's in. Still here. All right, James is going to stay with us. All right, James. We'll get rolling in on the final segment here. So let me get it all up and going. I knew I was forgetting something. You guys are getting a peek behind the curtain today. How you like it? Check out the website, man. We got some really good stuff up. ClemsonSportsTalk.com. All right, there we go, James. I think everything is ready to rock and roll. So back at it on a Friday afternoon, the show that shakes the Southland, Clemson Sports Talk, Lawton Swan with you, hanging out live over on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. And we've got James, Jeffrey, Rich, Miranda. Didn't even see Miranda's note earlier. Linda's in the house. Miranda says, I think Clemson is going to be unbelievable this year. Go Tigers. Look, I'll tell you this, Miranda, you got a chance to be right. I mean, they are a team. I'm not just throwing on my orange shaded glasses and drinking my orange Kool-Aid and my orange underwear here when I say this. When they're a team that can play for the national title. I don't know if they're good enough to win a national title, but all you got to do is get in the game and you can win it. And so from that standpoint, I think, to be honest with you, they've got a legitimate chance to make that kind of run. And if you've listened to this program long enough, I do not always think the best team wins the national title. For example, 2015, when Alabama beat Clemson. I thought Clemson was the better team that day. And that's why Nick Saban had the onside kick, and he had Kenyon Drake's kick return for a touchdown. O.J. Howard just happened to get loose. And I think that was less about Alabama being great and more about busting Clemson's coverage. And or else that game might have been a wide margin for Clemson to win. And I'll be honest, I think Alabama the next year when Clemson wins the title with Watson to Renfro, I think Alabama was the better team. And if Bo Scarborough doesn't get hurt, I think Alabama wins that game. So I think in those 2 years, the team that really wasn't the best wasn't the best team, ended up winning. But that happens. That's sports. You just want to be in the fight. And I think this team is good enough to get in the fight. And I think depending on who they match up against would determine whether or not they're good enough to win that fight. And maybe with Dabo Swinney coaching, it doesn't matter. Dabo Swinney could sell, ice cream to an Eskimo. I don't deny that at all. 803-450-0086. So out in Texas, in Austin, Texas today, the news came out that the Longhorns have named Quinn Ewers as the starting quarterback. Ewers, you may recall, left high school early to go to Ohio State to capitalize on name, image, and likeness, then transferred back to Texas. This whole name, image, and likeness thing drives me insane. And has now earned the starting job. Ironically, Texas also has a young man that's committed to play for them next year, who everybody has been cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs about, Arch Manning. So Ewers, who is still a freshman, will be a sophomore when Manning arrives. And I'm just going to tell you as it is. One of those two guys is portaling. Somebody's going to portal. Both players are not finishing their careers at Texas. I guess the only question, or the only thing that could change that maybe, would be if Quinn Ewers has such a phenomenal sophomore year that is technically his third year out of college, of high school, that I guess he could then turn pro. Other than that, one of those guys is probably leaving. Not next year. I could see Manning being, understanding enough that you want to come in and learn Sarkisian's system and take your time and develop. It's hard for me to believe that a guy that would have the background that Manning does in the sport would be somebody that would feel like you've got to rush things. And again, I get it. He's not Peyton's son. He's not Eli's son. He's Cooper's son. But I don't think Cooper Manning is hurting financially either. So it's not like there's also got to be this rush to the money and the allure of the NFL. So he's probably going to be willing to sit and learn next year. That will be Quinn Ewers' second season as the quarterback, a redshirt sophomore. And then he should be able to leave and go pro. But if he doesn't have that kind of year, and Manning's coming on strong, heading into Manning's redshirt freshman season, somebody's leaving. Somebody's leaving. You rest assured, you follow Texas and you mark it down. By the way, Texas hosts Alabama September the 10th. So welcome to college football, Quinn Ewers. Good luck with that one. 803-450-0086. Thomas is in the house today. He says, hello, everyone from Columbia. Thank you, Thomas. Listening to the program online today, but probably most of the time on Fox Sports Radio 1400, the Midlands, and around the world, of course, on the iHeartRadio app. All right, coming up on the program, hour 2. And looking at the docket here, I think we're going to be able to pull this off. Clemson Tom will be joining the program. So what we will be doing for the sake of a, quote, rebroadcast of this show, for those of you watching and streaming right now, we will be dropping off the video feed and bringing back a part 2. So hang with us. I think we got time to pull all this off. You're going to get the full 2 hours online today. Again, 803-450-0086, text line, phone line. And you could be a part of the program anytime over on our website. Lots of incredible content, including our interview with Tim Beret yesterday, where he gave some awesome stories about Frank Howard. You got to go check that out. All right, we'll be right back. Hour 2 next. Stay with us. All right, so for everybody watching, here's what's going to happen. We're at 53 minutes in. I'm going to end this broadcast. James says Texas is a mess now. Yeah, it's going to be a little bit different, I think, for the Longhorns. So here's what's going to happen. We're going to drop off for just a minute or two. I'm going to get Tom on the line. We'll come back live with a second feed, okay? I'll see you in just a few minutes.